Hey guys, on this week's episode, we're going to talk about the top 5 tips for new visitors to Las Vegas, tipping, large markers, and so much more. So stick around and enjoy.
I found out something very unsettling about Harry. Gambles. What do you mean he gambles? He plays craps in the back room of a private club. I mean, you know, you 11, come on, little Joe. Snake eyes, hard way. That's how it goes. He loses a lot of money. You had no idea? No, I didn't.
Welcome to the Crap Vegas podcast.
Vegas, here we come.
Vegas!
Here are your hosts, Chris and Josh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 39 of the Crap Vegas podcast. I am Chris. He's Josh. Josh, what's new today?
Well, I am just ready to go to Zorkfest. Zorkfest is in a couple days from the time we're recording. In fact, we'll drop this while Zorkfest is going on. So super excited for that. Can't wait to just get on the road. And I haven't been to Lake Tahoe in a long time. And I don't think I've ever stayed in Tahoe at one of the, at Harrah's or Harvey's or one of the big properties. So I'm excited for that.
So knowing you're probably flying into Phoenix and driving up from there. Is that correct?
I am actually flying into Reno. I gave some thought to flying into Sacramento.
Oh, okay.
And then driving. It's a pretty drive and not too much farther, but just flying into Reno. So nothing exciting there.
You could have done that. You could have flown into California. I'm sure Mark Duvall would have given you a ride over if you needed it.
I could have flown into San Diego. Yeah.
There you go. That would have been
short
good.
drive.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm excited for you. I'm sure that's going to be an awesome weekend. I can't wait to hear all the stories coming out from there. And hopefully you make them all 6, 7, 20 times.
That's the plan. Or I hit a royal flush on all this video poker I've been practicing.
And then we'll have to change our whole podcast up. So that would be awesome.
Right.
Hey, you got to reinvent yourself sometime. I guess it might as well be now.
We're constantly reinventing.
We are. Okay, so let's tell people how to get a hold of us, though. You can reach us via email. That's podcast@crapvegas.com. You can reach us on our Facebook page. That's crapvegas.com/Facebook. You can reach us via voicemail. That's crapvegas.com/voicemail. Or the easiest way is always going to be on Twitter. Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, X.
Boom. You're getting slower and slower every week. Golly, that Alzheimer's is setting in. And that's at Vegas
I'm just
Duffy.
following along as you do the spiel.
I know. At Vegas Duffy. I'm at Small Whale 13, or the show page is at Crap Vegas. So as we do at the beginning of every show, Josh, let's talk about previous episode feedback. We can start with a DM that we got from James. This is the same James that joined us on our last trip and played a whole lot of dice with us, and also moderator James from the Facebook page. James said, just listen to episode 38. I was really hoping you guys would talk about the dude who kept throwing down his credit card and then Josh throwing his insurance card down on the table. Okay, I don't know how we forgot that this happened.
We forgot this story, and this is an awesome thing that happened to us.
I don't know if awesome is the right word. It was just so strange. We're playing at a table, and this is when James was at the opposite side of the table as we are. Josh and I are on one end. James is on the other end. I think Jack had already left at that point, Josh, if I remember correctly, because these people were in his spot where he would have been playing.
And this is at our last trip, just to kind of set everybody on the same page. This is our last trip to win. And we told a lot of stories from this trip on the last show, but this is one that James reminded us that we forgot.
Yeah, I don't know how we forgot it. But we're standing there, and 2 people or 3 people walk up to the table, and this gentleman who was maybe mid-20s, Josh, does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so. Somewhere in there.
I mean, definitely not an American citizen. English was not his primary language either. But he walks up to the table and wants to buy in, and right in the middle of the roll, and it was a good roll too, if I remember correctly, he throws his credit card out on the table. And everybody just kind of looks at him. And then the base dealer pushes the credit card back to him and says, no, cash only. And he picks it up and he throws it right back at her, even further this time in front of her. And she pushes it back again.
And he's not being belligerent. There's no negativity in this.
No, he's just clearly not understanding. So not fully understanding what's going on, I turned to him and tried to explain it's cash only, no credit at the table. And he clearly doesn't understand anything I'm saying. So I should have just raised my voice, Josh, because that's how you make people understand what they don't understand.
That's how it works.
Language.
Chris, you said that they probably English wasn't his first language. I don't think English was any language that he spoke. I think this was
maybe it was his seventh language, but
and as I recall, it was yeah. And as I recall, it was his passport and his credit card.
Well,
like he was putting down both. Right.
It started with the credit card. And then when they wouldn't take that, he threw the credit card and the passport together. And then they looked at the passport and gave it back and gave his credit card back. And then he'd throw the credit card again. And this went on what felt like a solid 5 minutes, like right in the middle of a good roll.
Oh, yeah. It just kept going.
So what does Josh do? Josh joins in on the fun. Josh throws his health insurance card out on the table.
It was my car insurance. I threw my State Farm card out on the table.
He tried, and so everybody else around the table just kind of started reaching into their pockets trying to figure out what random like Blockbuster video card they could throw out on the table to see if that was going to help at all. I don't know what eventually ever happened. I do know at some point they sent security over to him and pulled him away from the table and tried to have a conversation with him. I don't know if they were trying to do it in his native tongue to make it easier on him or what. At some point after they talked, he did come back to the table and throw his credit card down again. So it clearly did not get across.
Message didn't get through. Chris, that reminds me of a story when I worked for the airline. I was working at the customer service counter or something like that. And I was a supervisor or whatever you call it, lead. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, one of our other customer service agents brings over these 3 people who I believe were Chinese. And they said, or the customer service person told me that they had missed their flight to San Francisco. So I looked and I looked at them and I said hi. And I said, "You're going to San Francisco?" And they looked at me not comprehending kind of this same situation. Like this wasn't getting through. And I kind of said, "San Francisco?" And they looked at me bewilderedly. I'm like, "Oh gosh, if we can't even get the city that you're going to, we're in a little trouble." Right. So I was looking at the computer and I saw the next flight I could get them on was 3 hours from them. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, we have these 3 people that speak no English that now have to stay here for 3 hours. What about gate changes? What about those kind of things?" So got them rebooked to San Francisco, had an agent take them to the gate, called the gate and said, "You have got to watch these people. They're going to miss the flight again. They just speak absolutely no English. You've got to keep an eye on them for the whole 3 hours." So we did. We monitored them for the whole 3 hours to make sure they got where they were supposed to go. But that story reminded me of that.
So Wynn being the property they are, they really should have people that take care of these people, right? They should have translators around them at all times. That should just be a service that Wynn provides.
With all the AI stuff, I bet you could go to Google and have it translate. I mean, obviously there's Google Translate, but there's probably some sort of audio translation that you could have done. But anyway.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
Not mid-roll.
So anyways, James, thank you for mentioning that. I completely forgot about it. It was absolutely hilarious at the time. We really did enjoy it happening. Other than the fact that it broke up a really good roll, but the roll did continue after that gentleman walked away for at least another 10, 12 rolls. So he didn't mess things up completely with his mid-roll buy-in attempt.
Nope. It was just fun. I had a great time with it.
And a follow-up on that, Josh, was it just me, or did this last trip to Wynn feel like there were so many more mid-roll buy-ins than I ever see at Wynn?
There were a lot, for sure.
Every time
Come on,
you're
people.
at a table. People just kept walking up and buying in over and over. They'd see a decent roll. They'd come throw cash down. And then even worse than that, they would throw cash down. It would be like 5,000 or 10,000. So they'd have to take a lot of time to count it.
Yeah.
And then they would take no action out of it. If you're going to do that, and I'm sure we've mentioned this before, if you want to buy in mid-roll, just give enough cash to buy the bets that you want to put on the table and just say, "Hey, give me 400 on the evens or something."
Right.
Give them something they can do quickly, put the bets out, and then get the rest of your cash after the roll's over or after a point is made. That would make me happy.
But really, for the sake of all of us, don't buy in mid-roll.
Please don't. Sit back. I know it's painful. It's the second most painful thing. The first most painful thing is when you're leaving a table just after you colored up and you're waiting for a marker slip to come back to you that you paid off. And then the next shooter just makes like every number possible.
That's what I was going to say. An hour roll happens.
I actually find that to be worse, Josh, because then I think, gosh, I really cut myself one roll short.
Oh, for me, the worst thing is if I occasionally, I'll leave the table, go to the bathroom and put a, one of those little plexiglass things over my chips. I come back. And if it is mid-roll when I come back, I'll do my 270 across or whatever it is I'm playing.
Well, that means
and then, of course, what happens? Exactly. It's like, dang it. I should have just stayed a little longer in the bathroom.
It's the same thing as when somebody's made like 4 points in a row and they just made the all. They make another point and you finally come in because you're on.
Then you buy in, right?
And then it's always 0.7. I mean, it just every damn time. There's no reason in doing it. Just wait and then, jump in when the time is right.
You can never time it.
Okay, so next question. We got an email from listener John Q. John said, "Hey guys, love the show and appreciate everything you all do for the community. I have a qualm though about the way you guys speak about Wynn. I stayed there last weekend and don't get me wrong, everything was absolutely amazing and the staff were unmatched. But the property's table limits were so high that it was unplayable for most players. I never saw a craps table below $50 and usually they were $100 or more. I would love to give them my play as it was an amazing place to stay, but between the hotel prices and the table limits, it just doesn't seem viable for me. Extra special thank you for the Patreon content. You guys go above and beyond, and I love that you give back to your listeners. Keep it up, and I'll keep spreading the good word. John." Yeah, John, we try to point this out every time we talk about Wynn, but it's a place that's just not meant for all players. They have a very specific demographic they target, and that's who they're interested in have stay there.
Yeah, thanks, John. Again, that's a great observation. And as Chris said, we pointed out as much as we can. And does it mean you shouldn't stay there and play somewhere else? Absolutely not. In fact, that's probably the way to go if you want to stay at a place like Wynn and have that experience. Just plan to go somewhere else to gamble. It happened. Chris and I run into it too, even at playing a little higher levels. Sometimes the tables are just too high for us.
Yeah, we've been priced off tables many times, especially weekend evenings. Or if there's a big event in town that weekend, or say like it's the first weekend of March Madness, you may not find a table under $100 there.
Right.
All properties bump up their rates during the day, towards the evenings and stuff. But yeah, Wynn is very aggressive with that. They're going to raise it. They'd rather have one $100 player than four $25 players every day. That's just how they are.
And if you are staying at Wynn and want to gamble there, as we've said, that almost always you can find lower tables over at Encore. And it's worth a try, if that's important to you too.
Now, Josh, take this from your own perspective. Let's say we were going to Macau. I don't care.
Right.
I'm choosing a random location. And you had the option to stay at their nicest property that they have over there. Say it is the Wynn over there.
Right.
Say that's where you're going to stay. Would you stay there paying, I don't know, the equivalent of $700 or $800 a night if you knew you could never get on a table there? I actually don't think they have craps. But I'm just using this as a example story. Would you pay $700 or $800 a night for a hotel room if you knew you weren't going to be able to play at that property just because it was the best?
I don't think I would. No, as we've talked about, I really like staying at a place that I'm comped, and if I had to pay for it, I don't think I would. I think I'd stay at a lower place, even though I would be nice to stay at a nice place and the nicest place, that kind of thing. How about you?
I like to play where I stay. I think that's important to me because I don't want to walk all the way around and waste half my time going across the city. So I would probably pick the best available room that was comped, or if I'm paying out of pocket because I'm a lower level gambler, I would pick the best combination of table game minimums and decent value for property. I tried to find something that was a good in the middle sort of thing. But yeah, Wynn's not going to be that for most people. I feel like it's one of those places where you're either a hosted player and you're comfortable playing there, or you're paying out of pocket and you probably aren't even going to gamble there in the first place.
Or, you're paying out of pocket, or where I thought you were going to say you're paying out of pocket, you just don't care. Right.
If you're a slot player, it really doesn't matter at all. You can play slots anywhere. Table games are the only place that they really hit you hard.
That's a great question, though. It is something that comes up a lot.
Okay, so we got an email from listener Larry W. Larry said, "Josh and Chris, we've never met, but you guys feel like old friends of mine at this point. A couple episodes ago..." Wait, hold on. We got to stop there. Old friends, is he commenting on our age, or is he just saying that he feels like he's known us for a very long time? Because that's very important to me.
Your age.
Oh, so young. He feels like we're young friends.
Feels like we're young old friends, right?
Okay, let's start over, Josh. We've never met, but you guys feel like young friends of mine at this point. A couple episodes ago, you guys had a guest on that specialized in delivering items to high-rolling guests in Las Vegas. Loved the guest, but it brought a question to mind about you guys. You have hosts that take care of all your requests and leave gifts up front and stuff. But what is the craziest thing you have ever asked a host for, and did they fulfill the request? Hopefully meet you guys in Vegas soon, Larry.
Thanks so much, Larry. And yeah, John Evans was a guest of ours a couple shows ago, and that was terrific. And he does deliver some crazy things and have some crazy stories. I don't think I have anything very extreme. The most that I think that I've ever asked a host for, and we've talked about this on the show, I think, if not, it was on Patreon, but for my non-gambling trip at Aria for my wife's birthday last year, I mentioned to our host that it was for her birthday and that it was going to be a non-gambling trip. And he went over and above to make that a special trip for us. Sorry, I said Aria. I think it was Vidara that we actually stayed. But he had a cake for her with her name on it. He had some other, gift basket things. He had a banner on the window that said happy birthday. There were probably a few other things that he went over and above, but I didn't actually request that. I mean, it may have said, can you make it special or something like that. Other than that, I mean, I tend not to ask a host for much more than the standard things. How about you, Chris?
I think the craziest thing I've ever asked for, and I probably wouldn't even do this anymore, I asked if there was any way I could get a helicopter ride for two around Las Vegas. And this was probably 5 years ago, maybe. It was well before I knew you, Josh.
Right.
I was going out there and I was with somebody that it was probably one of their first or second times to the city. They saw these helicopters at night and how cool it looked. And they've seen all the photos and stuff. And they're like, hey, can we do this? And I was like, well, I can ask. So I asked a host that I had at the time if that was something that they could accommodate. He said, let me look into it. I'll get back to you. And probably 2 or 3 days later, I got a call back from him and he said, look, I can set it up, but he said, I can't comp the whole thing. He said, I got to take it out of your points and it's going to be like X dollars. And at the time, the X dollars cost that he gave me was way too high for what I was willing to pay for this person. So I said, no, don't worry about it. It's okay. So I kind of got shot down with kind of an intermediary. Yeah, we could, but, and there's been plenty of times we've talked about this before that Josh and I have asked for simple stuff like transportation from point A.
That's where I was going to say too. Yeah.
We've got shot down many times on just simple requests like that. It all just comes down to the person at the end of the day and how busy they are and what's going on and how much you've gambled that weekend. I find if you're in the middle of a trip and you make a request, you probably are a little bit more likely to get it granted if they can look at your play and say, oh, look, yeah, he's getting killed this trip.
Right.
We should probably accommodate. Than if you ask up front when they're just going to say, yeah, based on historical, probably not.
Yeah, we've had a fair number of no's, usually from Win, and that's okay.
That's okay. We expect it.
But yeah, I did get, Chris, I mean, before you and I knew each other, I did get our host at Win once gave me the Phantom over to, I think it was Planet Hollywood, which was a once in a lifetime thing. But other than that, we get shot down a fair bit on relatively standard requests.
We do. Yeah, we're used to being rejected at this point in life. It's okay. We've got much stronger. Okay, Josh, so we've got a lot of questions from new gamblers about places we think they should play and stay and what they should do and all this other stuff. I talked to you and we decided, why don't we come up with a top 5 list of things that we think every Vegas newbie should do on their first trip?
Yep, I think that's a great idea. And as Chris said, that's something that comes up. I'm sure it comes up for all of our listeners too. I'm going to Vegas for the first time. What should I go see? What should I do? Everybody wants to know. So here's our ideas.
So as somebody that likes to have lists and have like different
Chris is a list guy.
I like things to be organized. Here's how I broke it down, Josh. When we said top 5, I didn't come up with like the top 5 things that you need to do while you're there. I broke it into kind of the 5 areas that I consider as part of a trip. So I said for number 1, let's answer where to stay. So you're a Vegas newbie. You're going to Vegas for the first time. Where do you think you would want somebody to stay?
I would want somebody to say, Chris, and I have the advantage of seeing your answers in front of me. You don't know what I'm going to say, but I have the advantage of seeing your notes. But I agree with you. Chris said center strip, and I think that is absolutely right. If I'm telling somebody, then they're going to Vegas and asking me for advice for the first time, it's center strip. And it depends a little bit on budget. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say Bellagio as if you have the budget for it, Bellagio is what I would say is a place to stay for your very first trip, center strip. If you don't have that budget, then my honorable mention would be Paris. I think if you're going to stay a little lower limit, but still have that great location, I really like the atmosphere at Paris. I don't think it changes much from daytime to nighttime. So if that vibe is right for you, I think you get it throughout the day. And I think that's the same with Bellagio. Those would be my 2. How about you, Chris?
Fair enough. I guess I was considering this like from I'm assuming, okay, they're a new person coming to Vegas. They're probably younger. Their bankroll is probably not the same as somebody that's a little bit more seasoned like yourself, Josh, an old boomer.
Right.
So I thought, let's keep the cost
I'm
down
not a
little
boomer.
bit, but still have the amazing Vegas vibe. So I said Planet Hollywood would be my choice. It's center strip. You can get to almost any casino in that area extremely quickly. You have 10 choices around you that you can walk to. You can, what I like is especially if you're in the North Tower of Planet Hollywood, you have great views of the fountains if you're fountain facing. Well, not anymore. Thanks, F1. But you used to have great views of the fountains from there. Maybe if you're still high enough, you can see over top of it to see the fountains. It's just a property I absolutely love. They have good food options available. It's a great place to gamble. They have good dealers. The floor has really good energy to it. And if you're younger, there's a great vibe there where you'll fit in and you'll be happy and the music's good. And they got the dancing dealer sort of thing going on sometimes in the evenings. It's just an awesome place to stay.
I totally agree. Can't argue with that at all. In fact, I thought about Planet Hollywood. Paris is usually my pick because I think it fits more people.
It's
I think it's
old.
a little.
Okay.
There you go. Okay.
I
Audience, you can, if you're a little younger, go with Chris's. If you're a little more seasoned, you can go with mine. Either one. No, I think if you don't have the budget for Bellagio, if it's not, as Chris said, if you're on a more limited budget or a younger person just going for the first time, I think Planet Hollywood is a great choice. You also have the Miracle Mile shops.
Yeah,
you have
a lot
lots of good places there. Right. I would choose Paris just because I like the atmosphere a little better most of the day. Sometimes Planet Hollywood changes a little bit at night to me, that kind of a thing. But either one, you can't go wrong.
And see, it's funny you say Bellagio because I would never recommend anybody go to Caesar's Palace their first trip.
Well, me either.
I just don't think anybody would have a really good time there. I don't think the energy is the right thing that you want for your first trip to Vegas. The place is really massive and spread out. So depending on what hotel tower you're in, you're going to have a completely different experience. Yeah, it's just not a place I would ever push people to go. But I do think Bellagio, for a couple reasons, would be a good first place.
If your grandparents were going to Vegas for the first time, you might say Bellagio. Right.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or somebody Josh's age. Yeah.
Right.
Perfect. Okay. Number 2 then, Josh, on the list. I said my next category is where to play. So you know where you're staying now. You got your casino for staying figured out. Where do you go to play, though, if this is your first time in Vegas?
Well, we're going to say, I'm going to follow along your lead and say, okay, maybe not Bellagio level, because I would say Bellagio. I mean, I love the casino floor at Bellagio, and I would say stay there and play there if you can do it.
No,
but,
see, hold on. I would say that's a bad idea, though. I think it goes along the same lines of that you never want to win the first time that you go, because then you're hooked for the rest of your life. I don't think you want to start off at a super high level property. Because then what happens when you go
where do you have to
like
go?
Excalibur and Luxor and you're like, what the hell is this?
So we should really be saying stay at the Trop. And just
yeah, maybe that's a better suggestion. And go play at Silver Sevens, and then maybe your second trip you step up.
But let's say you stay at Planet Hollywood or you stay at Paris. I think roaming around the Caesars properties is great. It's a lot of fun. The new Link Promenade or whatever that thing is has lots of stuff to do and see. And the gambling is usually relatively low level or lower level at some of those properties. And going from one to the other is usually really easy. So I'd say roam the Caesars properties. And then I would say, Chris, and I see you have this on your notes too, downtown.
Did you copy all my notes? Is that all it is?
I didn't. I have some differences too, but I'm taking advantage of your notes here in front of me. I would say downtown, specifically the Golden Gate or Circa, if that's more in your mood. But I'm thinking Golden Gate as
that, but
well, I know you can't.
Yep. No,
they could be a sponsor, Chris.
We'll deal with that when that time comes, and we'll have to delete a lot of tape.
So I was going to say just the vibe at Golden Gate for a first timer to go in and see, really get that old school Vegas-y feel, I think is great and would be perfect for a first timer. And then, of course, you throw in the Fremont Street experience and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that if you're staying at like a Planet Hollywood Paris, you roam around the strip to all the different properties. If it's your first time, just walk around and see all of them. Because maybe there's a place that the vibe it gives off is exactly what you're looking for. It may be a little calmer or more, you like more excitement. You got plenty of options that are all walkable right there that you can see. But as much as I don't like the Fremont Street experience, I do think it's important that your first trip to Vegas, you just go downtown one night. I'm not saying that you have to spend your whole trip there. Just choose one night, take a cab downtown, and just hang out. Don't sit on the Fremont Street experience in that little area under the canopy and just sit there and watch people. I wouldn't encourage that. But just walk around to the different properties down there, see all the different vibes. And I agree with Josh. I think Golden Gate is actually a really good place to go your first time. I would have said the D is a good option as well. And boy, I'm just really killing myself here, Josh, given all DS properties back to back here. But yeah, there's many great options down there. I think you'll have a great time. It's a completely different vibe. And you may find that you enjoy it more downtown than you do on the Strip. And that is possible. Right. Some people definitely prefer that, and I understand that. It's definitely not for me, but for a lot of people, they enjoy that experience more. So see both sides of it, and then for your second trip, you can decide, do you want to stay downtown this time, or do you want to do something else on the Strip you haven't done yet? Okay, so number 3, though, Josh, where to eat. This is tough because Vegas has hundreds, if not thousands, of amazing restaurants around town. And you could do anything from going super casual spots that are amazing to love it frozen custard, which I don't know if that's your pick or not, but I hope it isn't.
It's not. It's not on my list.
Okay, good. To nicer steakhouses. There's a lot of options, but at least for me, Josh, my thought was if you're staying at Planet Hollywood, this is your first trip to Vegas, I think you need to eat at a very nice steakhouse in town to get that full Vegas luxurious experience. And for me, Strip House would be the choice.
So, Chris, I agree with everything you said, but I took a little different tack. For my first recommendation, if I'm place to eat in Vegas for a first timer, I'm going to say Mon Ami Gabi because I
actually considered that because that's a place I used to go all the time, especially when I was a Caesars guy. I love that place. I really do. It's just not the first place I would pick out now.
Well, for me, it is the best location. And so it combines pretty good food. I don't think it's the best restaurant in Vegas, not even close. But you combine pretty good food with just an extraordinary location for people watching. That would be what I would say. Go there. You get a real feel for that corner of Vegas and what's going on.
The only thing I would say about Mon Ami Gabi, though, is that getting an outside table, which is what you really want,
can be tricky.
So you can. It's very tricky. If you make a reservation online, those are not outside tables; those are inside tables. Which are, I mean, the food's the same. There's no difference there. The service is the same. It's great. But I think what people really like about Mon Ami Gabi are the outdoor seats that look over the fountains, which of course now you can't see jack shit, Josh, because there's grandstands.
No, you can't. The huge grandstands, right?
So don't do it right now. Wait 6 months till those come down or whatever. But no, it is an awesome place to go. The views are usually spectacular watching the fountains for dinner at night. I'm a huge fan of that place, and I can't fault you at all. It's just, it's not as nice as Strip House. It's more of a middle ground. It's not as pricey, but the quality's also not as good as you would find there.
Well, and even for steakhouses, I went a little different direction thinking about first timers. And by the way, Strip House is as we've said before, Strip House is my favorite steak restaurant in Vegas. So I'm with Chris on that. So my recommendations are not entirely based on taste of the steak as much as other factors too. So I thought of Golden Steer, which, Chris, I don't know if you've ever been to the Golden Steer. I have. And it was a really nice meal. It wasn't as good as some of the nicer, to me, it wasn't as good as some of the nicer steakhouses in Vegas, but I still enjoyed it. And I think for a Vegas first timer, maybe if they're into the nostalgia part, Golden Steer would be a great recommendation for off strip and nostalgia and all that stuff. And then I thought about Prime at Bellagio. Again, back to Bellagio, because you have that location in front of the fountain or behind the fountains on one side of the fountains, right? And it's a great steak restaurant. That's the one thing I think gets missed at Strip House is you don't have the views or any sort of real ambiance outside the restaurant itself. That's my only hesitation there for a first timer, but I love the restaurant.
No, you're probably right. And you've probably talked me into switching my vote over to what you gave. I was just thinking geographically, Josh, if I'm putting these people at Planet Hollywood, they're going to be on that side. It just makes sense to go to the good steakhouse that's already there and you can get that amazing dining experience. But you are right. I think for first-time Vegas visitors, views are very important. And so, yeah, maybe capturing that is important to people and they would enjoy it. Same reason why maybe SW would be a better option so you could have the Lake of Dreams in the background. It's just not
thought about that too.
Place to go.
Right. The one thing, Chris, if you're keeping everybody in Planet Hollywood, you've got to send them for dessert to the Nestle Toll House store in the Miracle Mile shops.
I can't tell you how many times I walked out in those shops at night when I was drunk and just walked down and grabbed a couple of those cookie sandwiches.
Me too. Yeah.
It's
that's why I thought of it.
Yeah, no, I've done that many a times, so I can't complain at all about that choice. Okay, so number 4 on my list, Josh, we've talked about where to stay, where to play, where to eat. I think that it's important on your first trip to Vegas that you have at least one show your first trip, an actual show. And so I separated it into two categories, a day show and a night show, because I'm thinking two different budgets. Day shows are usually significantly cheaper. So for me, I said that if you're going to see a show during the day, you should go see Mac King.
I like that idea a lot. And I didn't honestly think about a day show.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't think of anyone I would suggest over Mac King. I haven't seen Mac King, so I can't even really comment on.
Okay,
but I
have
I take you at your word.
So
I know you have, yeah.
I wouldn't lie.
I can't think of another day show that I would recommend.
Potted Potter.
I haven't seen Potted Potter either.
Neither have I, but I know it's a day show as well. No, at least from my perspective, when it comes to shows during the day, I know there are other ones, but Mac King is one of those guys where I think it's family friendly, which is good. So it's a daytime show. You can take almost any age to see that show. There's some innuendo that takes place during it, but for the most part, it's very family friendly. He's an amazing, amazing magician. He really is. Even Penn and Teller will tell you that Mac King is their favorite magician, which is terrific.
Right.
And he's very funny. His act is the same every time. It doesn't change at all, but it doesn't need to change because it's one of those things you can see every couple years and you're still going to have a great time. And the price point's good, Josh. Tickets are like $30.
That's great. I'm gonna jump in for the evening show because I'm gonna steal your thunder and I want to get my votes out first.
What do you got?
I got Absinthe and O.
Literally the two things I have written.
That's why I wanted to say it first.
Yeah, I understand.
No, I think
steal it.
As we've talked about many times before, Absinthe is, I think, one of our favorite shows in Vegas and is a great recommendation for Vegas first timers. If you're someone that is a little more willing to go to a show that's a little more on the what would you say, raunchy side, or
it's on the edge of acceptability for most people.
Right. If you're not, then O is still amazing. It fits with my whole Bellagio theme for first timers. O is tremendous. And I know some people think it's a little boring sometimes and that kind of thing. So know your audience for Vegas first timers, but either of those two shows, they're very different. And I don't think you'll go wrong with either one.
But Josh, that poses the natural question. We said recently that Atomic Saloon Show was our favorite show in Vegas. Why would you recommend somebody see Absinthe first over that show?
It's a good question. And I thought the same thing as I was saying Absinthe. I'm like, why didn't I pick Atomic Saloon? I think Absinthe is probably more appealing to a wider variety of people. I think it offers your comedy and your acrobatics and all that kind of thing. Whereas Atomic Saloon didn't have as much of the acrobatic stuff. I don't know. What do you think, Chris? It's a really good question. And also, Absinthe has been around for a long time. People know it, that kind of thing. What do you think?
I can't put my finger on it either, Josh. And I would have said the same thing that you said. I like Atomic Saloon Show better than Absinthe for many reasons. But if you ask me why I would recommend Absinthe first, I think it captures a slightly wider audience. I think it targets a slightly younger visitor. I think because of the way that it's kind of structured, I think it leans more in that direction. I think that Absinthe is the perfect jumping off point. It's like the epitome of what I would expect out of a Vegas show. It has a little bit of everything. It's raunchy. It's funny. It has amazing tricks that take place during it. It's the right amount of time. It's right at that 75-minute show that you expect in Vegas. So it doesn't drag, but it's also not too short. I just think it's the perfect show for somebody on their first trip out there. And if you like that, then branch off into Atomic Saloon and Opium and other shows of that nature. If you don't, then go see a Cirque show. You can't go wrong going to see Ka or the Beatles, Love or anything like that.
Or for a lower price, Mad Apple, which we saw in too.
$40, $50 or whatever they're selling tickets for. All those shows are great. I just wouldn't do that on my first trip to get the true Vegas experience.
Agreed.
But it's hard to go wrong in Vegas. There's really not too many shows that are bad other than Awakening.
But yeah, for a first timer, I think we're aligned. Either O or Absinthe for sure.
Okay, so those are the first four, Josh. My last thing on my list is, what is your must-see attraction? Because I think if you're going to Vegas that first time, you need to see a show, and you also need to go see some sort of attraction that is unique to Las Vegas.
Agreed. I'm going with the grandstands.
Yeah, those are great, aren't they? I mean, just a beautiful. They're really.
You can't help but miss them.
No, yeah, they. The sphere. Just go stare at the sphere and look at the emoji. Look back at you.
I can't say the sphere because everybody's going to see that, whether they're a Vegas first timer or not. And you can't miss it now. So, but Chris, I went with the most obvious choice you can possibly come up with, the fountains at Bellagio, and tied into that the conservatory at Bellagio.
Well, of course you did, because I typed that out and you were lazy and didn't want to do any of your own work on this.
It's on my list that I wrote before I saw your notes.
Bullshit.
It really is.
Okay, well, that's the two that I had written down that I think everybody should get to the conservatory and just see it. I think it's engaging for everybody. It changes quarterly, so there's always something fresh and new in there. I especially love their Christmas ones.
That's what I was going to say, too.
If you're going late in the year, you definitely have to go by and see their Christmas setup with the polar bears and everything else that's going on there. It's just really engaging for all people. And if you're not choosing one of those, Josh, boy, that's a tough one.
The idea I had, Chris, was the canal at Venetian, which I know you haven't spent a ton of time there, but I think that's fun to walk around. You have the sky and all that stuff, which the Caesars Forum shops have, but I think the Venetian does it even better with the canal. Mm-hmm. I think that's a fun, you can kind of imagine yourself in Venice. And I was thinking of an honorable mention of that.
What, Josh, why haven't we got on one of the little boats and rode around
Done
together?
The gondola ride?
Yeah, why haven't we done that together? We could get the private one. I bet you we could afford it.
That's Patreon content.
Oh boy, we should video that, us going through that. Boy, that would be so engaging. Okay, I agree with you there. I can't think of anything else that I think right off the top. I mean, there's so many things to do your first time, whether it's going to the Mob Museum or the Neon Museum or even taking, somebody to the Pinball Hall of Fame. There's a lot of things that are unique to Vegas that I think would be really enjoyable for most people. Josh recently went to Omega Mart and did that whole thing over there, and we talked about that.
Area 51, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things going on in Vegas that you can do that are unique. Just stay away from the chain stuff. Don't come to Vegas and go to Top Golf. That doesn't make sense to me.
For the first time. Not that you shouldn't go to Top Golf, but your very first trip.
You can. You can do that at home usually, so don't do it in Vegas.
But Chris, if you want to get drunk and hit some golf balls, I don't know. I'm not against that. I haven't done Top Golf, but...
So are you saying next trip you want to go to Top Golf with me? Is that what's going on here?
I think one of our other... We'll take Jordan or somebody like that. I don't know. Are you a golfer?
I golf, but I'm not good at it. But maybe Seth would want to go with us or something. I think he's a big golfer.
That's true. Seth is a big golfer too. Okay, listeners, we're going to have a meetup at Top Golf.
Top Golf. That's what we're going to do. Other people do Vegas-y things. We're going to Top Golf. And actually,
by the way, this show is brought to you by Top Golf.
Yeah. Are you looking to play golf, but you're not good at it? Top Golf for you. Make sure you go to topgolf.com/crapvegas. I wonder if there's a way we can work in a plug by the time this episode comes out, Josh. Can we reach out to him?
We better, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So I think, Josh, that wraps it up for the 5 things that I wanted to talk about for a new Vegas, Vegas visitors. Or anything else you want to mention?
I think we covered about all of them. Now we've got to do a top 5 places not to send your new Vegas person. Your Vegas first timer.
I'm going to give everybody a hint for number 1 before we even get to that. The Green Door. Do not go to the Green Door on your first trip to Vegas. Josh, it's funny.
I did not think you were going to go there.
I used to play blackjack at Cromwell a lot. I actually know a couple dealers that still work there that I'm friends with. And there was a guy I used to play with. I doubt he actually listens to this. He's still even a Facebook friend of mine. His name's Yuri. But he used to always tell me when I first started going out there after they opened, hey, you really should go check out the Green Door. It's a pretty cool place. I think you'll have a lot of time. They have some really good food there. And I was like, what is this place, the Green Door he's talking about? And I started looking into what it actually was. And then I found out, and for the longest time, he tried to convince me to go. One time, I did go. That is a completely different story. That is definitely Patreon only.
That's content. Patreon content, right?
That's not meant for the general consumption of everybody. But it was an interesting time to say the least. But that's my number 1 on my list.
I was going to say something much less funny, like the Trop or...
yeah. The Trop and
don't
the
go
Green
there.
Door. They're right there together.
Maybe don't go to you might with all the changes, but don't go to Rio your first time. There are a few that just... I wouldn't want to send somebody to someplace they were going to have a sour on Vegas experience. And in my mind, the Trop could be that. No offense to people that love the Trop, but same with Rio right now. It's kind of down, and but it's coming back.
So let us know your thoughts on that. Do you agree with our top 5 picks for these things? Do you disagree? Let us know. We'll talk about some of it next episode. listener question time, Josh. We are always bombarded with questions and comments that we desperately try to get to quickly, but usually forget to. And it's no different this week than any other week. So let's kick it off with an email from Daniel. Daniel says, question, hey guys, just stumbled on the show and love it. I started episode 1 and am working my way through. You mentioned on an early episode that tipping a slot attendant shouldn't be based on the value of the win because they're doing the same amount of work either way. In general, I agree with that. I'm curious if you use the same logic on a bar tab. Would you tip on one $20 bourbon pour the same as a $200 pour? Keep up the great work, Daniel. Josh, I don't know how many episodes it's been since we talked about that a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, I think.
Boy, my feelings have not changed at all. I'll tell you that. I still don't think that the tip that you give on a slot jackpot has anything to do with how much that jackpot is.
Now, I think, and thanks, Daniel, for the email. I'm with Chris, I think, but I honestly haven't had jackpots that varied enough for me to think about it a whole lot. I mean, usually, if I get any sort of hand pay on a slot machine, it's between, $1,200 and $2,000. And my tips are usually in the $40 to $50 to $60 kind of range for that. But I tend to think more along Chris's line of thinking. So I agree with that. As far as booze and expensive drinks and tipping more, I tend to tip per drink.
I do too.
Rather than what I have ordered. That's the way I tend to think of it. But I'm not a huge expensive drink guy. So if I ordered a $200 pour, I don't know what I tip $20. Probably not.
No, I don't think I would either. I think about this from two perspectives. So if we're talking about, it actually works out for cocktail waitresses much better the way that we do it. I know that my standard rule is for whatever drink I order on the casino floor, I tip $5, period. Flat. It's always the same, whether I'm paying for the drink, not paying for the drink. It does not matter where I'm gambling across the country. It doesn't matter if it's a cheap little $2 bottle of water or if it's a fancy bourbon pour with a water. I tip $5 every time that person comes. I have never heard a complaint about that. I always get amazing service. When they see the $5 tip right from the beginning, they come back very quickly and are very friendly. And Josh will tell you, usually my cocktail waitresses, because they know I drink a ton of Fiji water when I'm out in Vegas, they almost always carry an extra 2 Fiji waters on their tray. And before I can even say anything, they're handing me one before they even ask if I need anything. Because they know, look, every time I bring this guy a Fiji, I'm getting $5. So it's kind of a win-win for them, and I never decline it. Now, if we're talking about a pour in a restaurant, I don't care if it's a restaurant, a bar, I'm not tipping more because it's a more expensive bourbon for the most part. I think it's still fair to be in the $5 a drink sort of range for a tip. I mean, Josh, when we go to a show and we buy 2 drinks and they cost $75, I'm probably going to tip $10, $15 on it.
Right.
And if those drinks cost $20 or if they cost $200, I'm still probably going to tip $10 to $15. That seems fair to me.
Yep, I agree. The kind of one example that I was thinking of that's a little different is to use, going back to the strip house, if you have a really nice steak dinner and you get a bottle of wine, you get the bill at the end of the meal and it's total of whatever it is, $400, let's say. I think I'm tipping at that point off of the total, 20%-ish of the total, and not thinking, that's the kind of the one exception, but that's different than just getting drinks at a bar or that kind of a thing, where I do tend to follow along with you.
I'm there with you. Yeah, if we're going to a restaurant that actually has a full meal and everything else, and it's part of a longer tab, then yeah, I'm just tipping based off the total. But if we're talking just going to a bar and just ordering drinks, you and I are sitting at the Heart Bar at Planet Hollywood or whatever it may be, then yes, I'm just going to tip a certain amount per drink, and it has nothing to do with what I ordered.
Me too.
Okay, so good question, Daniel. Thank you for that. And thank you for going all the way back to the beginning. It's always good to hear about those old episodes I've forgotten about at this point.
We're afraid to go back and listen to those.
I kind of wish they would disappear. So maybe I should make that happen. Okay, second question, Josh. We got a DM from Jeffrey. Jeffrey said, quick question for you guys. When I was in Vegas at the end of August, I was playing at Park MGM. Bought in at a $15 craps table for like $400, as I'm not a huge gambler. At the same time, the guy next to me takes out a $20,000 marker, the biggest I've seen personally, and on the very first roll, he starts playing the dark side, both don't pass and don't come, at $2,500 on the don't pass and $500 on the don't come. I was so intimidated, I nearly just colored up and left. I didn't, fortunately, as we ended up hitting points and he was gone in 15 minutes, having lost his whole marker. Have you guys ever had a situation where you bought in and then immediately colored up and left after one roll for any reason? Thanks.
So Jeffrey, thanks for the question. And we've all been there. And yeah, I get intimidated when those things happen. I think Chris does too.
Sure.
You feel that person has some knowledge or something that you don't have, or I don't know. I'm just trying to think of what the intimidation is. Obviously, they're gambling at a level that sometimes you can't even fathom.
I think we give deference to those that are betting more than we do. And this is not unique to craps or anything, because I feel like this actually used to happen a lot more when I was a blackjack player, where if I had $1,000 on a hand and some guy's at first base betting $10, if he was considering a questionable hit, hitting like a 14 against a deuce that he shouldn't hit, he would kind of look at me like, hey, is it all right? They'd almost ask you for permission in those cases, not because I was acting after him, but because he felt so bad about the amount of money. So I think we do this just as gamblers in general. We kind of, I don't want to say look up to, because that's the wrong term, but I mean, we do give special treatment to people that are betting more than we do.
So as far as your kind of example, I have definitely left a table after I bought in, like almost immediately. But it wasn't because, for me, it was similar. It was somebody playing the don't, but it wasn't the size of their buy-in. It was the way their personality they were doing. And the example that I can think of is over at Aria. I think, Chris, you were with me. I'm not 100% sure. We had just bought in, got our markers, and a group of 4, 5, 6 younger guys came up and all started playing the don't, and very loud and gregarious and, having lots of fun. And first thing that went through my mind is, if I lose, I'm going to be just extra mad because they're all celebratory and they're playing of the don't. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's going to make me frustrated. Or if I win, they're going to become pains and it's just not going to be fun for me. So I looked at the box and I said, hey, I'm sorry. I'm going to color up and go to this other table. And I felt bad for, the person just having gone through that work and them cutting out the chips for me and all that stuff. But you've got to play the way that brings you joy, to go back to the early episodes of the show. And if you're not going to have fun playing with somebody at the table for whatever reason, whether their level of play is intimidating or personalities, you got to change.
It's amazing how these stories stick in your head, Josh, because I remember the exact table you're talking about. I know where we were standing. That was the trip I had to go back and forth to the host office twice because for some reason they were having trouble issuing markers on the floor. So finally, once I did get back, you were kind of filling me in what was going on.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So you colored up your marker immediately, and I didn't even get one issued on the table. And we apologized to the floor for all the work. And he said, no, I understand completely. But yeah, I don't care about dollar amount of buy-ins. That doesn't really bother me. Don't get me wrong. We've said many times where when we're shooting on a table with somebody betting 40 or 50,000 a roll, you feel kind of responsible for what happens, even though you shouldn't. But at the same time, that would never scare me away from a table. But if there are players at the table that I just don't want to play with, whether they're don't players that are causing all sorts of problems, or more so if it's just jerks at the table. Like I don't like how they're treating dealers. It's making me uncomfortable. People that
somebody's really
shots,
drunk and obnoxious.
Yeah, really drunk people. Then yes, I'll color very quickly and go to the next table. And yes, I hate that I made them do all this work to get chips cut out or anything like that. But no, I'm the first one to just say, here, color me up. I'm going to move on.
So it's a great question. Thank you.
Okay, finally, Josh, we got a DM from Matt. That's Matt_Coles on Twitter. And he said, hey guys, love the show and the stories. I'm typically a blackjack player and mix in some craps. I never play Heidi or any other slots. Why? They're intimidating. As someone who never plays, there are so many types, various buttons, people hitting buttons as fast as they can, and different ways to play and win. Do you really need to know what you're doing at these fancy slots, or can any idiot, including me, play and have the same chance of winning? I'm open to checking out some slots, but a machine with no one around is more intimidating to me than a full blackjack or craps table. Thanks for your insight.
That is a great question that I had never thought about, Matt. I honestly, we've heard lots of stories about people stepping up to a table feeling like they're too intimidated to play. I haven't heard somebody say that about a slot machine. And it's good that you're saying that, because I'm sure if you feel that way, there are other people that feel the same way too. That, I mean, when I was little, back in the black and white days, a slot machine was just the 3 cherries or whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
And now it is so many choices you can make, so many bet levels you can play, so many lines you can play. You should have an idea of what you're doing. And Chris is good about there on all these machines. There is a rules button or a rules way you can get to the rules of the machine to see what the various things are that trigger the extra bonuses and how many lines you have to play or credits you have to play. take a look at that if you want to kind of dive in a little bit. Make sure you're familiar enough with the machine that you're comfortable. But really, I wouldn't say there's a lot of difference. I mean, play at the bet level that you're comfortable with and just let it go, and you'll kind of get the feel for it. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, the good news about slot machines is it's really hard to mess up. When you hit the button, the RNG determines if you're a winner or a loser.
Hit
so
the button.
There's nothing you can do to really mess that up. It's going to determine the moment you hit the button the first time if you won or lost before you even see it on the reels. Now, there are certain things on slots. I mean, we're no slot experts by any means, but there are certain slot machines where it makes more sense to bet the top bet because it opens up bonuses that might not have been there, or certain progressives that you don't have access to if you're not betting the top amount. It's generally a good rule of thumb to play the highest denomination that you can play comfortably. So in that sense, it's better to play a dollar machine at $5 overall than it is to play a dime machine and play 50 dimes. It just usually the higher the denomination, the better the payback on the machine, at least according to what we see on gaming reports. Typically that's the case. Like, it's better to play a $5 machine than a $1 machine, and $1 is better than a penny machine. That's usually the case. If you're looking for best payback, typically avoid all those video reel slots that have all sorts of branded content on them.
Avoid Heidi's.
Like Heidi's or NFL slots that just came to Vegas, or a Family Guy slot that used to dominate Vegas there for a while. All those are going to have lower payback than an old 3-reel quarter machine. They just are. So just keep that in mind as you're going. But no, it's really hard to mess this up. Just pick a game that you find interesting. Try to pay attention if there's any progressives or anything that require a max bet, so you don't shoot yourself in the foot a little bit on that. But no, just step up, hit the button, and good luck to you.
And the nice thing about a slot machine is you can find one where there's nobody around. You can put $20 in and press the button a few times and just get a feel for it. I think that should help.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So Josh, let's wrap it up there on questions this week. Patreon, patreon.com/crapvegas. Thank you to all the new patrons who signed up over the last couple weeks. That includes Ryan M., Adam, Todd B., Mass Hat, Colleen R., Derek G., and Ben B. Josh, what's new on there?
Thank you, guys. Thank you to the new patrons, first of all. And this last show, we had our ideas for an ideal Vegas trip and some more commentary on Professor Slots.
I don't know how he came back up again, but he did. We got an email about it. I may have said some things that I'd been holding back for a while, but yeah, go check that out if you're interested. And for those that were curious about an update on our survival pool, we are now down to 41 entries left after week 5. Only 15 people, Josh, haven't used their mulligan yet, and I am one of those people, so I am absolutely killing it.
And one other thing on Patreon, we kind of started an impromptu NFL picks contest between me and Chris that came up on the last show. Chris finished 2-3 in week 1 of the contest over on Patreon. I finished 2-3 in my NFL picks. So if you're a patron, or if you want to be a patron and want to follow along on that nonsense fun, you're welcome to.
And it's really good because you can win money based off how we do with no money invested of your own. So you got to root for us, even though I didn't do too well first week, but that's okay. But yeah, check it out on there. Look, we try to do as many things as we can to give back to our listeners. We already have that survival contest with tons of prizes. We're doing this with no entry required, where we're trying to give money back to listeners as well. So look, we love all of you. We appreciate all of you guys supporting us. It makes us feel awesome. And the best thing we can do is try to give some of that back to you.
Yep. And as we always say, we really try and pride ourselves on putting content on Patreon that's fun, and, not just, we want it to be consistent. We want it to be fun and worth listening to. So appreciate all the support.
Absolutely. 100%. Upcoming trips. Josh, usually I have like 3 things in my notes about upcoming trips that you and I are about to take. But when this drops, you'll be at Zorkfest and wrapping up. I don't have anything else on my calendar right now.
Nor do I. We've talked about maybe making a little midweek trip down to Vegas sometime. I think a weekend trip before the end of the year might not be in the cards or in the dice for us. But I think we have a January tentative trip planned, hopefully back to Aria. We'll see if MGM is back on their feet by that point or not. But that's it. No, right now
it's up yet, Josh. I mean, we didn't talk about updates on MGM, but it's still not working.
Not to say that if you don't go and stay at an MGM property, you might have a great time, all that stuff, but they're still not back up the way we want them to be, particularly with the rewards and all that stuff. So it's no MGM for us for a little bit, but hopefully in January or beginning of next year to start our race towards noir again.
I guess so. Last week, Josh, we gave a shout out for listeners to leave a review on their favorite podcasting app, and I do want to thank a couple individuals that actually did so. A special thank you to Ant110, Box of Birds, Texas Rob 3, and Rev Dan. All four of them left a nice 5-star review, and I thought I'd read one of them from Ant110. He said, subject, it's the all tall small in a podcast. And his comment said, listener since day one and enjoy their craps knowledge, stories, and overall banter. I think of Chris and Josh as the craps odd couple at times. Both have their own unique thoughts and characteristics. Josh, have you ever considered us the odd couple?
Not until I saw this review. I think that could be an apt description. And Chris, are you old enough to know what The Odd Couple is?
I know it was a TV show that existed, but no, I was not alive when that show was on television.
The Odd Couple has had at least 3, I'm going to go on just my knowledge, 3 incarnations. It started as a stage play by, hold on.
Bruce Boxleitner.
No. Who wrote it? Neil Simon.
That's my old person reference I throw out for everything involving you.
That's perfect. If I'm correct, it's a Neil Simon play, and then it went to a movie with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon. Walter Matthau playing the more messy sports bettor, and Jack Lemmon playing the neater bean counter. And then it went to a TV show with Tony Randall playing the Jack Lemmon part, and Jack Klugman playing the messy, what I would think I was more of the Josh role in this Odd Couple.
Okay, fair enough.
Analogy. So there you go. That's more than you wanted to know.
In my notes that we were.
That's off the top of my head, folks. That is not. I didn't practice that. That's off the top of my head.
So fair enough. But thank you to all 4 of you that did. I would encourage everybody still to leave a nice review if you get a chance. We really do appreciate it. It helps other people find us. It's just an awesome thing that you can do to support the show. It takes 2 minutes of your time, and we really would appreciate it.
Very much. Thank you.
We restocked our hoodies for the upcoming cooler weather. Quantities are getting limited in a couple different sizes, so I encourage everyone to move quickly if that is something that you're interested in. Josh, anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
Well, the only thing I was going to say, Chris, as we were making our lists for Vegas first-timers, I was thinking about food, and I was thinking of, would I recommend a buffet to a Vegas first-timer? And if I did, it would be Bacchanal at Caesars for a first-timer, but would I recommend that? And I settled on no, I'd rather the restaurants we talked about. Would you ever recommend a Vegas first-timer go to a buffet? I know you're not a buffet guy, but...
I'm not. I would recommend the Spice Market Buffet, but I believe that's been closed for a few years.
It's gone now. You just want to stick with Planet Hollywood. You don't want your Vegas first-timer to ever leave Planet Hollywood.
It was a terrific buffet.
I'd love that buffet, yeah.
And I was a nice diamond card holder, so I got premium seating.
Me too.
And I got to skip the line and everything. No, I love that place.
Go down the little escalator down there.
Oh, yeah, it was in its own little area. Wicked Spoon at Cosmo was always a decent option for people that were looking kind of an intermediate buffet between Spice Market, but not as high as Bacchanal. I always thought that was a great option. I used to get those for free, so that was good too. Yeah, I mean, you can do buffets anywhere. That's not unique to Vegas or anything, but Vegas buffets are usually pretty top-notch. And the only thing else, Josh, I was going to mention before we get off here, did you ever notice that Adam Bauer was promoting a experience in Chicago the same weekend as all these other conferences?
Yeah, so to kind of level set everybody, there are, and this is not just my memory, I think there are 2 travel seminars in Chicago the same weekend as Zorkfest. So the weekend that this show drops, and Adam Bauer, one of our listeners, also a patron and a big mouth on Twitter, started his own travel. Right. Started his own travel conference, which, Chris, I still to this day don't know if is real or not.
Well, that's what I was going to mention, Josh, because I kind of played along with it because I know Adam's dry sense of humor. I thought he was just doing this and saying all these things as a joke to add a third conference on top of a busy weekend already. Why would anybody do a third conference in the same city? But that's perfect thing for Adam. You made a comment the other day about something, and so I happened to message Adam at the same time. I think you were copied on it. And I mentioned that, it's a joke, and Adam's like, what are you talking about? It's not a joke. I'm really doing this. I felt really bad because...
But I still don't know if he's really joking.
That's the problem is sometimes our senses of humor are so dry that you don't know when somebody's telling the truth or when they're just using their dry sense of humor that they have. So if you did sign up for Adam Bauer at Travel Fanboys conference this weekend in Chicago, please let me know if it actually exists, because I'm not 100% sure.
And this podcast has been brought to you by Adam Bauer's Chicago seminars.
It has. That's travelfanboy.com/crapvegas. Use promo code crapvegas for 10% off your tickets.
So to take us home, Chris, I do have one joke for you, because I know people love it when I sprinkle in those occasionally.
Is it better than the one that got cut from our last Patreon episode?
Oh yeah, that's locked away in the vault for forever and ever and ever. Or it'll be
Okay,
a separate
enough.
Release. No, this is very family friendly. What do you call a confused bee?
I don't know, Josh. What do you call it?
A maybe.
Josh, what did the ghost say to the bee?
Well, you've said this one before. You're
Okay, that's it. See you guys next time. We appreciate you listening. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Vegas, here we come.
Thanks for listening to the Crap Vegas podcast.
Have you ever been to Vegas?
Check out all our recent news and our Vegas trip calendar by visiting crapvegas.com.
See you in Vegas.